Most people think the elite speak differently because of fancy words, expensive education, or flawless grammar. That's wrong. The top 1% speak in a way that commands attention because of how they deliver their words, not just the words themselves. Speaking like the elite is not about sounding pretentious. It's about communicating with precision, purpose, and presence. They speak less and say more. When the average person feels the urge to fill every silence, the elite embrace it. They understand that silence isn't awkward, it's power. Every pause forces the listener to lean in, so stop rushing. Speak at a controlled pace. Let your words land. Because when you speak slower, you sound more confident. And when you sound more confident, people believe you. They choose their words like currency. Every word either buys credibility or costs it. The elite don't waste sentences on fluff filler or nervous laughter. They don't say, "Ooh, like," or, "you know," every 5 seconds. Instead, they train themselves to replace filler with pauses. They replace weak language with strong language. They don't say, "I think." They say, "I believe," or "I know." They don't say, "maybe." They say, "This is the plan." Weak language invites doubt. Strong language builds authority. Their tone matches their message. The elite don't just say the right words, they sound like they mean them. They understand that tone and body language carry more weight than vocabulary. Your voice needs range. Too flat, you sound bored. Too high-pitched, you sound anxious. Speak from your chest, not your throat. Put weight behind key words. Sound like you own the conversation. Because if you don't, someone else will. They master the art of listening. Most people listen just enough to reply. The elite listen to understand. They watch, they read micro-expressions, they catch what's not being said. And then, they respond directly to what matters most. That's why when they speak, it feels like they're talking to you, not at you. If you want to sound like the top 1%, start listening like your life depends on it. People will give you the words you need if you stop thinking about what to say next. They carry themselves as if they've already won. Speaking like the elite starts before your mouth even opens. It's in your posture, your eye contact, your stillness. You walk into the room and your body says, "I belong here." That presence changes the way people hear you. You can have the perfect speech, but if your body says, "I'm nervous," your words lose power. Stand tall, shoulders back, head up. Don't fidget. When you own the space, you own the conversation. The elite understand this. Every conversation is an opportunity to leave a mark. They don't waste words on gossip, complaining, or proving they're right. They use words to inspire, to influence, and to lead. If you want to speak like the 1%, you have to think like them. Every sentence should move the room forward. Most people think that the secret to sounding powerful is to speak a lot, to fill every silence with something clever or impressive. But if you pay attention to the people at the very top, the CEOs, world leaders, high-level negotiators, you'll notice something entirely different. They don't rush. They don't chase the conversation. They don't try to prove how smart they are by flooding the air with words. They speak less, but what they do say has weight. Every word is intentional, and every pause is calculated. This is because they understand that, in communication, quantity does not equal quality. The more you talk, the more likely you are to dilute your message, expose your uncertainty, or say something that diminishes your authority. The elite have mastered the ability to trim away the unnecessary and deliver the essential. Speaking less isn't about withholding information. It's about filtering for impact. Think about a great movie trailer. It doesn't tell you the entire plot. It shows you just enough to make you want more. When you speak like this, you create a sense of intrigue. People lean in because they want to hear what you'll say next. But if you dump everything you know in one go, you remove that curiosity. You've given them no reason to stay engaged because you've already emptied the tank. When you watch the most respected leaders speak, you'll notice they use pauses as a weapon. They're not in a hurry to fill the silence because they know silence creates space for their words to sink in. The average person tries to avoid silence because it feels uncomfortable. But in the hands of someone confident, silence becomes a display of control. A pause says, I'm not afraid to give you time to process what I just said. It also shows that you are not operating on someone else's clock. You're moving at your own pace, which suggests that you're in control of the interaction. In high-stakes conversations, this is invaluable. Another reason the elite speak less is because they measure their words like currency. Imagine you have a limited budget of words for the day. Every time you open your mouth, you're spending some of that budget. Would you spend it recklessly on filler phrases, unnecessary details, or stories with no point? Or would you spend it only on things that actually get you a return, things that build trust, respect, and influence? The top 1% treat their words like investments. They're not just speaking to pass time, they're speaking to move the needle. It also comes down to precision. When you strip away the clutter from your speech, your words hit harder. If someone says, "I think we could maybe try to do this if it works for everyone," it sounds hesitant and forgettable. But if they say, "This is the direction we're going," it's direct and authoritative. The difference isn't intelligence. It's editing. The first speaker is filling space with qualifiers and uncertainty. The second speaker is giving a clear directive, and it instantly sounds stronger. The elite have trained themselves to cut away the fluff and deliver their message in the shortest, most powerful way possible. Speaking less also gives you a strategic advantage in reading people. When you're talking nonstop, you're too busy expressing yourself to notice how others are reacting. But when you speak less, you create space to observe. You can see the micro-expressions, the body language, the little shifts in tone that tell you whether your words are landing or missing the mark. This feedback loop allows you to adjust in real time, which makes you far more effective in influencing people. The person who controls the conversation isn't always the one doing most of the talking. It's often the one guiding the flow through well-placed questions and precise statements. There's also a psychological principle at play called scarcity. The less people hear from you, the more value they assign to your words. If you're constantly speaking, your voice becomes background noise. But if you speak only when you have something worth saying, people start to associate your voice with value. They know that when you talk, it matters. That's why when a high-level executive or a respected figure finally speaks in a meeting, everyone turns their attention to them. They've built a reputation for speaking only when necessary, so people listen. Another element of this is emotional control. People who speak less often are less likely to blurt out something reactive or damaging in the heat of the moment. They've trained themselves to think before they speak, to weigh the cost and benefit of their words. This ability to remain composed under pressure is one of the reasons they're respected. The person who can pause, breathe, and then deliver a calm, measured response always has the advantage over the person who talks impulsively. Of course, speaking less doesn't mean being cold or disengaged. It's about being intentional. It means you're not speaking just to fill the air. You're speaking to shape it. The way you say things matters just as much as what you say. Short, deliberate statements often carry far more authority than long-winded explanations. That's why military leaders, top lawyers, and high-stakes negotiators rely on brevity. They know that clarity is power, and the fewer words you use, the less room there is for misunderstanding. This approach also forces people to step up their listening skills when they're around you. If you speak in a way that makes every sentence worth remembering, people will tune in more closely. They'll give your words more attention because they know you won't waste them. And when you have that kind of audience focus, your ability to influence skyrockets. The discipline of speaking less and saying more takes practice. You have to train yourself to resist the urge to over-explain. You have to be comfortable letting a point stand on its own without piling on extra justification. You have to be okay with silence. And you have to trust that the right people will respect you more for your restraint than they ever would for your constant commentary. The way the top 1% choose their words is deliberate, almost surgical. They don't speak by accident. They don't let words fall out of their mouths without thinking. Every sentence they deliver is like a transaction. Either it builds their credibility, their influence, their authority, or it weakens it. They understand that words have power, and once they're spoken, they can't be taken back. That's why they treat language like currency. You can spend it carelessly and find yourself broke, or you can invest it wisely and see the return multiply. Most people use words to fill space. They rely on crutches like, like, or, I guess. These habits don't just clutter speech. They send a subtle signal that you're unsure of yourself. In high-level circles, that's deadly. Confidence is the currency of influence. And every time you use filler words, you devalue yourself. The elite train themselves to replace filler with silence. If they need a second to think, they simply pause. That pause communicates far more confidence than nervous, verbal clutter ever could. Then there's the problem of weak language, words and phrases that immediately strip away authority. Phrases like, I think, maybe, kind of, hopefully, all suggest uncertainty. The elite don't hide behind these hedges. Instead of saying, I think this is the best direction, they say, this is the best direction. That small shift transforms how people perceive you. One sounds tentative, the other sounds decisive. In competitive environments, decisiveness wins. Precision is another reason the elite's language stands out. They don't just talk in generalities, they use words that hit with clarity and purpose. If they describe a problem, they don't say, things aren't going well. They'll say, our revenue is down 12% this quarter. Specific language does two things. It makes you sound informed, and it eliminates confusion. The more precise your words, the less room there is for misinterpretation. This precision builds trust because people know you're paying attention to details. Another hallmark of elite communication is the absence of emotional leakage in their language. Many people reveal more than they should in casual conversation: frustration, insecurity, doubt. The elite know that every unnecessary admission can be used against them, so they control the emotional tone of their words. This doesn't mean they speak coldly. It means they filter. They decide what to share and what to withhold based on strategy, not impulse. In negotiation, this is critical. If you reveal uncertainty, you've already given the other side leverage. They also understand the value of positive framing. Instead of focusing on problems, they focus on solutions. Instead of saying, we can't meet that deadline, they might say, we can deliver it by the following week. The shift may seem small, but the psychological impact is massive. Positive framing keeps the conversation forward, looking and positions you as a problem solver, not a problem presenter. People are naturally drawn to those who bring clarity and solutions rather than obstacles. Word choice is also a reflection of mindset. The elite don't use self-limiting language because they don't carry self-limiting beliefs. You won't hear them say, I'm just lucky, when they succeed, or I hope it works out, when they set a goal. They own their successes and take responsibility for their outcomes. This ownership is reflected in the strength of their language. They use active, assertive verbs, decide, build, lead, create, because these words reinforce the reality they're shaping. Another subtle but powerful tactic they use is aligning their language with their audience. The top 1% are masters at reading the room and adjusting their vocabulary accordingly. They know that using overly complex jargon in front of a non-technical audience can alienate people, while oversimplifying in front of experts can make them seem uninformed. They adapt, not by being fake, but by making their message accessible without compromising its strength. This adaptability keeps them relatable and respected in any room they enter. They also understand that the wrong word, even if used unintentionally, can destroy trust. That's why they prepare. They rehearse important conversations, speeches, and pitches. They choose their words in advance for maximum impact. This preparation doesn't make them sound robotic. It makes them sound intentional. When you speak with intention, people stop questioning your competence and start following your lead. Beyond the words themselves, the elite are hyper-aware of the economy of speech. They don't overload sentences with unnecessary adjectives or redundant phrases. They strip away the excess until only the essential message remains. This minimalism is what gives their words punch. In a world where everyone is oversaturated with noise, brevity is a superpower. When you can deliver a complete thought in half the time it takes someone else, you earn the listener's respect and their attention. Confidence in word choice also comes from knowledge. The elite don't just speak well because they've practiced, they speak well because they know their subject deeply. When you truly understand a topic, you don't need to dress it up with fancy language. You can explain it simply, and that simplicity is a mark of mastery. As physicist Richard Feynman once said, "If you can't explain something in simple terms, you don't understand it well enough." The elite live by this. Finally, they know that words are not neutral. They either build your brand or weaken it. Every conversation, every interview, every meeting is an opportunity to reinforce who you are and what you stand for. That's why they're intentional, not just about their vocabulary, but about their stories, metaphors, and examples. They choose anecdotes that align with their image and message. They avoid casual remarks that could contradict their values. They understand that in high-stakes environments, your reputation is shaped not by the big speeches, but by the small comments people overhear. Choosing your words like currency takes discipline. It means resisting the urge to speak without thinking. It means replacing filler with silence, hedging with certainty, vagueness with precision. It means being aware that every word you spend is either an investment or a loss. The elite don't leave that to chance. They budget their words, they invest them wisely, and they watch the return grow over time. The way you deliver your words often matters more than the words themselves. You can have the perfect sentence, the most well-thought-out point, but if your tone is flat or your presence is weak, the impact evaporates. The elite understand this better than anyone. They know that speaking is a full-body experience. Your voice, your pace, your posture, your eye contact, even your stillness are part of the message. They don't just speak, they command. When they walk into a room, people notice. When they open their mouths, people listen. That's not an accident, it's a deliberate skill they've built. Tone is the first layer of authority. Think about how a steady, calm voice feels compared to a high-pitched, rushed one. The first projects confidence, control, and competence. The second projects anxiety and uncertainty. Elite communicators use tone the way a musician uses notes. They vary it, emphasize certain words, and drop their voice at key moments to add weight. They don't speak in a monotone because that puts people to sleep. They also don't let their voice rise at the end of every sentence unless they're asking a question. Why? Because an upward inflection makes a statement sound like a question, which weakens it. If you say, "I'm confident in this plan," with your voice going up, you sound unsure. But if you say, "I'm confident in this plan," with your voice dropping at the end, it lands like a fact. The elite are also masters of pacing. They never sound rushed, because rushing communicates desperation or nervousness. They take their time, not so slowly that it drags, but slowly enough that the listener can absorb the message. And when they want to create urgency, they pick up the pace strategically. It's not random. It's intentional. This control over rhythm keeps people engaged because it breaks the monotony and makes the listener feel like they're on a guided journey. Volume is another tool they use. The average person thinks being loud equals being powerful, but the elite know that volume is only one part of the equation. In fact, lowering your voice can sometimes be more powerful than raising it. A well-timed drop in volume forces people to lean in. And that physical act of leaning in creates a psychological effect. They're drawn closer to you, both physically and mentally. The best speakers know how to fluctuate between strong projection and intimate, almost confidential tones. That range makes people feel like you're speaking to them directly, even in a large crowd. Beyond the voice, there's body language. Presence starts before you even say a word. The elite carry themselves with a physical stillness that radiates control. They don't fidget, shuffle their feet, or let their eyes dart around the room. They know that constant movement communicates nervous energy which undercuts authority. Instead, they move with purpose. When they gesture, it's deliberate. When they take a step, it has intention. That economy of movement makes everything they do seem more important. Eye contact is another critical piece. People at the top look directly at the person they're speaking to, but not in a way that feels aggressive or uncomfortable. It's a steady, calm gaze that communicates, "I see you, I'm present, and I'm confident." In a group, they make sure to connect with different individuals so everyone feels included. This isn't random. It's a tactic that builds rapport and keeps attention. The person who avoids eye contact comes across as insecure or dishonest. The person who locks in respectfully comes across as trustworthy and strong. Gestures also play a role in presence. The elite don't overuse their hands, but they also don't keep them frozen at their sides. They gesture in ways that match their message. Open palms when inviting trust, firm pointed gestures when making a decisive point, and larger movements when they want to convey passion. Their gestures are extensions of their words, reinforcing the meaning instead of distracting from it. They also understand the power of posture. Shoulders back, spine straight, chin slightly lifted. Not so much that it looks arrogant, but enough to signal that they're alert and in control. Slouching, leaning too far back, or folding into yourself tells people you're either disengaged or lacking confidence. Your posture is often judged before your words are even processed, so they make sure their physical presence sends the right message before they open their mouth. Clothing and grooming are silent but potent parts of presence. The elite know that people form judgments within seconds, and those judgments affect how their words will be received. They dress in a way that fits the environment but elevates their image, never sloppy, never careless. They make sure their appearance aligns with the authority they want to project. This isn't about vanity, it's about strategy. When you look put together, your words carry more weight. Breathing is another often overlooked factor in tone and presence. The top communicators breathe from their diaphragm, not their chest. This not only gives their voice more depth, but also keeps them calm under pressure. Shallow breathing creates a shaky voice and makes you sound nervous. Controlled breathing keeps your voice steady and your mind focused, allowing you to speak with clarity, even in tense situations. They also master the art of strategic pauses. Instead of filling every moment with sound, they allow space between sentences. These pauses give their words room to land and give the listener time to think. They also give the speaker a moment to assess the room, read the reaction, and adjust if necessary. A pause can be more powerful than the sentence that came before it because it creates anticipation. Perhaps the most subtle yet important element of tone and presence is congruence, when your words, tone, and body language all match. If you say something is urgent, but your tone is flat and your posture is relaxed, people won't believe you. If you say you're confident, but your voice is shaky and your eyes dart around, the message is lost. The elite make sure every part of their delivery supports the message they're sending. This alignment creates authenticity, and authenticity builds trust. Finally, the elite never forget that speaking is about connection, not performance. Even with all their control over tone, pace, volume, and posture, they still make their audience feel seen and valued. They know that authority without warmth creates distance, while authority with connection inspires loyalty. They balance strength with approachability, power with humanity. This combination is why, when they speak, people don't just hear them, they believe them. Most people think communication is all about talking, getting your ideas across, making your point, winning the room with the right words. But the people at the very top know a secret. The real power isn't in the speaking, it's in the listening. The elite treat listening like a weapon. They listen not just to hear the words, but to understand the person behind them. They listen for what's said, what's unsaid, and what's intentionally hidden. While the average person is busy preparing their next reply, the elite are gathering intel, reading the situation, and positioning themselves for maximum advantage. Listening like a strategist starts with full presence. When you're with someone, be with them completely. The top 1% aren't glancing at their phones, looking over your shoulder, or mentally rushing to their next meeting while you're talking. Their attention is like a laser, steady, focused, and undivided. This doesn't just make the other person feel valued, it allows them to catch every nuance, every shift in tone, every hesitation. You can't read a situation accurately if you're half distracted. Presence is the foundation for everything else. They also understand that people communicate on multiple levels. There's the literal meaning of their words, the emotional tone behind them, and the nonverbal cues that tell you whether their words are aligned with their true thoughts. The elite are constantly cross-referencing these signals. If someone says, "I'm fine," but their shoulders are tense, their tone is clipped, and they avoid eye contact, they know that fine doesn't mean fine. They don't take language at face value, they read it in context. One of their most powerful tools is the strategic pause. When someone finishes speaking, most people rush to respond. The elite let a beat of silence pass. This does two things. It gives them time to process what was said, and it creates space for the other person to elaborate. People have a tendency to fill silences, and in that extra space, they often reveal more than they intended. A single well-placed pause can yield more information than a dozen direct questions. Another part of listening like a strategist is knowing how to ask questions that open doors. The elite don't just ask yes or no questions. They ask open-ended ones that encourage the other person to talk more. Instead of, "Did this go well?" they might say, "How did this play out from your perspective?" This invites detail, stories, and emotions, the raw material they need to fully understand the situation. And because they're genuinely listening, people can feel it. That sense of being truly heard makes others more likely to trust and share. They're also masters at reading patterns in speech. When someone tells a story, they pay attention to what's emphasized and what's glossed over. They notice if someone consistently shifts blame or avoids certain topics. They detect inconsistencies between different accounts. This kind of listening requires patience and memory, but it's how they separate truth from performance. Listening like a strategist also means filtering. Not every word deserves equal weight. The elite know how to sift through what's irrelevant and focus on what matters. They're not distracted by emotional noise or side stories. They extract the key points and store them for later use. This is why they can recall details from a conversation months later. It's not a photographic memory, it's selective attention. They decide in real time which pieces of information are valuable, and they lock them in. Another aspect is empathy, not the soft, vague idea of just feeling for someone, but tactical empathy, the ability to step into the other person's mindset and see the world from their perspective. This allows them to anticipate reactions, understand motivations, and negotiate more effectively. When you can articulate someone's needs and fears better than they feel understood, and people are far more likely to follow someone who understands them. They also use listening as a form of control in high-stakes situations. When tempers flare, most people talk over each other, escalating the tension. The elite know that staying quiet while someone vents can be the fastest way to diffuse the situation. It allows the other person to release their energy without resistance, and once they've run out of steam, the elite step in with calm, decisive words. This contrast, letting the other person exhaust themselves while you stay steady, often shifts the power dynamic in your favor. Another critical skill is listening for alignment between words and actions. People can promise anything with their mouth, but their track record tells the truth. The elite keep a mental ledger. They remember commitments, watch for follow-through, and adjust their trust accordingly. This doesn't mean they're cynical. It means they're realistic. They base decisions not on wishful thinking, but on observed behavior. Listening like a strategist also extends to group dynamics. In a meeting, for example, the elite aren't just listening to the person speaking, they're watching how others in the room react. Who shifts uncomfortably when a certain topic comes up? Who lights up when their project is mentioned? Who looks at whom before answering a question? These micro-interactions are gold for understanding alliances, tensions, and influence networks. They're also skilled at knowing when not to respond. Sometimes silence is the strongest statement you can make. If someone tries to provoke you, answering impulsively can give them control of the narrative. But if you stay quiet, they're left hanging, unsure of whether they've gotten under your skin. This composure can turn the tables in an instant. Finally, the elite know that listening is not passive. It's active engagement with the intention of extracting maximum value from every exchange. They listen to learn, to connect, to strategize, and to lead. They don't listen just for information, they listen for leverage. And because they've trained themselves to pick up on details that others miss, they often have an edge long before the conversation is over. Before the first word leaves your mouth, the room has already decided something about you. People make snap judgments within seconds, and those judgments are hard to reverse. The elite know this, which is why they focus on owning the space before they speak. They understand that authority starts the moment you appear, not when you start talking. The way you enter, the way you stand, the way you look at people, all of it sends a message. If you don't consciously send the right one, the audience will write their own narrative about you, and it might not be in your favor. Owning the space begins with posture. The elite don't slouch, hunch their shoulders, or collapse into themselves. They stand tall, spine aligned, shoulders back, chest open, not in an exaggerated way that feels forced, but in a way that communicates strength and openness. This posture signals confidence and readiness. You look like someone who belongs there, someone worth paying attention to. People notice this before you say anything, and it primes them to take your words more seriously when you do speak. Your movement matters too. Elite communicators don't rush into a room or make frantic gestures. They move with purpose. If they walk across the stage, they do it in a controlled, measured way. If they shift their position, it's deliberate, not nervous pacing. This economy of movement communicates composure and control. Someone who moves too quickly or erratically can look scattered or insecure. Someone who moves with calm intention looks like they're in charge. Eye contact is another pillar of presence. When the elite enter a room or step on stage, they scan the space calmly, making brief but meaningful connections with people. This isn't a stare down. It's a silent acknowledgement that says, "I see you, and I'm here with you." In one-on-one settings, they give their full attention to the person they're speaking to. They're not looking past them or distracted by what's happening elsewhere. This directness makes people feel seen, and that instantly builds respect. The way you occupy physical space also matters. The elite don't shrink themselves to avoid being noticed. They claim their space without apology. This doesn't mean taking up more than you need in an arrogant way. It means being comfortable where you are. Whether you're sitting in a meeting or standing in front of a crowd, your body language should say, "I belong here." This sense of belonging is contagious. People will believe it if you believe it. Clothing and grooming play a bigger role than most people want to admit. The elite understand that appearance is part of communication. It's not about wearing the most expensive suit or the flashiest accessories. It's about being intentional. They dress in a way that fits the environment while reinforcing their credibility. Everything from fit to color to cleanliness is thought through. If your clothes are sloppy, wrinkled, or inappropriate for the setting, people may unconsciously question your attention to detail. But if you're sharp and put together, you start the interaction with an unspoken advantage. Owning the space is also about energy. The top 1% bring a certain charge into the room, not frantic energy, but a grounded, confident presence. You can feel it when they walk in. This comes from internal composure. They don't need to prove they belong because they've already decided they do. They're not waiting for permission to lead the room. They've claimed it internally before they even step inside. That inner decision radiates outward in how they stand, move, and speak. Breathing plays an underestimated role here. The elite breathe deeply and evenly, which keeps their voice steady and their body relaxed. Shallow, fast breathing signals nervousness and can make your movements jittery. Controlled breathing slows you down and gives you the sense of unshakable calm. This kind of calm is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to someone who looks unhurried and unbothered, even in high-pressure environments. They also manage the space around them strategically. In a crowd, they position themselves where they can see and be seen. On stage, they take a moment to stand still before speaking, letting the room settle and giving themselves a moment to command the audience's attention. They don't rush into their first words. They let the silence make the audience lean in. This signals that they are worth listening to and that they are not on anyone else's timeline, but their own. Another part of owning the space is controlling micro-expressions. Your face tells a story before you speak. The elite are conscious of their resting expressions, making sure they project calm, openness, or determination. Depending on the moment, they avoid frowns, nervous smiles, or expressions that suggest discomfort. Even when they're listening, they maintain an expression that communicates engagement and authority. In group settings, they know how to subtly establish themselves as the center of gravity. They might position themselves where others naturally turn to face them. They might use small, but controlled gestures to direct attention. They often take slightly more time when responding, which shifts the rhythm of the conversation around them. These small cues make others unconsciously orient themselves to the elite speaker, granting them silent leadership over the room. Even their entrances and exits are deliberate. When they walk into a room, they don't rush to the corner or disappear into the background. They enter in a way that allows them to take in the environment and be noticed without making a spectacle of themselves. When they leave, they do so with the same calm authority, no scrambling, no darting out. People remember not just what you say, but the impression you leave as you arrive and depart. Owning the space also requires mental preparation. The elite rehearse not just their words, but their presence. They visualize themselves walking into the room with confidence, making eye contact, and holding their posture. They know that when the body leads, the mind follows, and when the mind leads, the body follows. By preparing mentally, they make sure that their physical presence is consistent and intentional every time. The ultimate reason this works is that people take cues from confidence. When you act like you belong, others believe you do. If you hesitate, fidget, or shrink yourself, people will mirror that uncertainty. But when you hold your ground, speak from a place of composure, and project authority before you even open your mouth, the conversation starts on your terms. By the time you actually speak, the room is already primed to listen. Speaking like the top 1% isn't about imitation. It's about transformation. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not, but about unlocking the strongest, clearest, most intentional version of yourself. The elite don't just communicate, they influence, they persuade, they inspire. Every word, every pause, every movement is a choice. They don't leave anything to chance, because they know that in every conversation, they are building or breaking their authority. That level of discipline isn't an accident. It's the result of conscious, consistent practice. When you speak less but say more, you strip away the noise that weakens your message. You stop diluting your ideas and start delivering them with clarity and precision. You learn that silence is not an absence of power but a presence of it. You make people lean in. When you choose your words like currency, you stop wasting credibility on weak language or careless phrasing. You start investing in phrases that carry weight and reinforce your image as someone worth listening to. Every sentence becomes a brick in the structure of your influence. When you match your tone and presence to your message, you bring your words to life. You project authority not just in what you say, but in how you say it. You control your pace, your volume, and your body language so that your delivery commands the room. You become memorable because you are deliberate, not because you are loud. And when you listen like a strategist, you gain an edge that most people will never have. You hear more than the words. You hear the motivations, the fears, the gaps, and the opportunities hidden in them. That insight gives you leverage that talking alone never could. Owning the space before you speak ensures that you begin every interaction with the advantage already in your favor. You walk in with posture, presence, and energy that signal authority without arrogance. People read you before they hear you, and you make sure what they read sets you up for success. You are not waiting for the moment to speak to gain respect. You've already earned it by the way you carry yourself. The truth is, these skills are not exclusive to billionaires, CEOs, or political leaders. They're available to anyone willing to put in the work. Speaking like the 1% is a mindset, a discipline, and a commitment to never letting your communication be careless. It's a decision to operate with intention, to make every word count, and to treat every interaction as an opportunity to lead. If you start applying these principles today, you will notice the change, not just in how others respond to you, but in how you see yourself. You'll walk into rooms differently. You'll hold conversations differently. You'll start to feel the quiet authority that comes from knowing you're in control of your voice, your presence, and your influence. And when that happens, you won't just sound like the top 1%. You'll move through the world like you belong there.